Thank you. Review or revisions or deletions to the agenda? Seeing none. Oh, sorry.
I would like to say something under reports by member of council about Francophonie Month, please.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Councillor Peltier-Living.
We don't need an amendment for that.
No. I have a motion in front of me. Be it resolved that City Council approves the agenda as printed. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Peltier-Living. Seconded by Councillor Graydon. Discussion? All in favor?
Yeah, I can't hear anything.
All in favor? No. That's carried.
There you go.
Any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature?
Thank you. Councillor Peltier-Levine has declared an indirect conflict of interest on new business item 15A, request for support for phlebotomy services, as she is employed by the Centre de Santé Communautaire de Temiskaming.
Thank you. Is there any others at this time? Matt? Can you hear?
Mayor, just a note that our audio on our stream didn't start until after the moment of silence, so it may be worthwhile to repeat your message that you provided before that.
For Wyatt? Okay, for sure. Thank you. It is with heavy hearts that I announce the passing of former city employee and active firefighter Wyatt Holtz on February the 25th, 2023. Firefighter Wyatt Holtz had been courageously battling cancer for the last 2 years. A full honor guard service for Wyatt will take place on Sunday, March the 19th, 2023. Our thoughts and prayers go out to Karen and family. Please join me in a moment of silence to show our respect to Wyatt. Thank you. And review and revisions and deletions to the agenda. There were none. I have a motion. Be it resolved that the City Council approves the agenda as printed. It was moved by Councillor Peltier-Living, seconded by Councillor Graydon. All in favor? That motion is carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature?
Thank you. I will note that Councillor Peltier-Levine has declared an indirect conflict of interest on new business item 15A, request for support for phlebotomy services, as she is employed by the Centre de Santé Communautaire de Temiskaming.
Thank you. Is there any others? Seeing none, we'll move on to review and adoption of the council minutes. I have a motion in front of me. Be it resolved that City Council approves the following minutes as printed. A, the regular meeting of council held on February the 21st, 2023. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Seconded by Councillor Foley. Discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. Item 7, we have no public meetings pursuant to the Planning Act, Municipal Act, and other statutes. Brings us to the first question and answer period. Is there any questions from the floor? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 9, presentations and delegations. And 9A, the Municipal Asset Management Plan Overview. Jeremy Latour, CET, Engineer Technologist for the City of Temiskaming Shores. Jeremy, if you want to take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Okay, so today I'll be doing a presentation on asset management. I do have the obligation to do so under the new regulation from the province through my 5-year implementation phase, which I'll get into details as to what that looks like. However, because this is a new council, I figured that it would be a good idea to just go back a little bit and just point some of the highlights from the last year's approval of the first phase of the plan. And then I'll be talking about what's coming up for next year's approval, and then the following year after that, which would basically finalize the entire thing. So I'll get started. Okay, so what is asset management? So it's a whole lot of different things all put together. Some of these things would be what do we own as a municipality in terms of assets, where they are within the municipality, what they're worth, the condition that they're in as well, and what needs to be done in terms of either replacing some of the assets as they get older, or repairs, or new, to get basically new assets, or remove some as the time goes forward. So what makes up asset management is basically 3 different things. One of which would be the performance, the risk, and the cost. And together they make the value of the services that's provided with them to the public. So just to give you an idea as to what those are, the first thing would be the performance. So basically, just to give you an example of what that is, if you look at a roadway during snow removal or other duties assigned to that, which would be just general maintenance in terms of pothole repair, it could be anything from line painting to street illumination and all those kind of things. So there is standards for a lot of different asset groups. For roads, there's a whole lot. So for example, in our case, the snow gets pretty much removed within 24 hours of an occurrence and not a month. So that would be the difference in terms of performance-based analysis. And then the first phase of the plan basically highlights what that structure actually looks like when it comes to coming up with that performance-based condition score. The second would be your risk. So there's a couple of things to note about this particular section. It could be taken in different ways depending on which route you want to take. So for example, if you look at the risk score between, let's say, a sidewalk and a water distribution system, they're very different because the impact of it is very much different. A walkway could be deterred to another road for the time that it takes to either repair or do any other type of maintenance on that slow section. A water distribution system can also affect a great amount of people, but also the health that comes along with it and all that type of stuff. So that's very important. And the last one, of course, which is always the more interesting one, is the cost associated to assets. It's a very challenging because there's a couple of things that we have to keep in mind when taking costs into account. So as an example, if you look at a roadway that's in very poor condition, of, let's say, in my example, I use 3 kilometers of it. So in order to just resurface that roadway, which would be, let's say, asphalt, it would cost you about $1 million, let's say. But not knowing that there's also other infrastructure maybe underneath it that you don't see, but is also very impactful when it comes to cost replacements and other analysis that are done. So when you take into account, for example, sanitary, water, storm, street lights, all that type of stuff, the amount could go, it can rise very quickly. So that same road section that you looked at getting refurbished is now costing you 4 times as much if you wanted to replace everything that's within that road section. So there's a couple ways of looking at it when it comes to cost, and that's one example. So what would be the council's role on asset management? It's basically just to overview and establish strategic direction when it comes to it. The most important thing obviously would be to establish the level of service. And I'll get to that in a little bit, but we do have 3 phases to our implementation as far as asset management goes. In the first 2, it's basically just highlights the current level of service that we have, and then the last phase would be your proposed level of service that council would have to start looking at based on the all the information that's within the document. The other point too that I'll make on this as well is to determine at the end of the day the best service that we can actually provide. Obviously there's a lot of different things that comes into play when it comes to determining your level of service for different asset groups. Obviously, everybody would want to have A+ service, but sometimes that's not feasible, so that's also something that we'll have to keep in mind when looking at that in the future. So like I mentioned before, in 2017, the province approved a new regulation for asset management that applies to each municipality in the province. That new regulation is a lot stricter in terms of requirements when it comes to asset management. So that's the thing that we have to take into account now moving forward as of 2017 when it comes to that, and developing plans that work around what the regulation actually states. And then timelines and all that as well. So what the province recommended was municipalities doing it in 3 phases, and these phases would be 1, 2, and 3. There's a mistake there on the bottom right. It's not phase 2 twice. Sorry about that. So basically, phase 1, which groups your core assets, was actually approved last year. The one coming up, and I'll explain that in a little bit too. So next year it would be all of your remaining assets, and then in 25, which would be your last phase, which would group your financial strategies and your proposed level of service when it comes to everything that's listed in both phase 1 and 2. Okay, so phase 1, basically, if you look at the existing document that we currently have for phase 1, it basically just highlights these categories. So it would be roads and sidewalks, bridges and centerline culverts, water, both distribution and treatment. Same thing with wastewater collection and treatment, and then stormwater as well. So they only list those assets and not anything else. That comes in phase 2, and I'll show you again what that looks like later on. The one thing to look at when it comes to those asset categories would be your current level of service that we currently provide for those categories, and your risk assessments based on the metrics that was set by the municipality beforehand, and then the cost to maintain those current levels of service when it comes to maintenance or new capital projects as well. Phase 2 would be all your remaining assets, and I listed a couple as to what that would be. So that would include all your facilities, your parks, active trails, your fleet, and more specific assets when it comes to public works, so, such as streetlights, street signs and guardrails, etc. And then the same thing again for these would have to be done in terms of basically listing your current level of service for those asset groups, coming up with a risk assessment, and then determining your cost as well to maintain those current level of service for those assets. Phase 3 would be the complete plan, and that's projected to be completed in 2025. That would include your proposed level of service, life cycle management, and then your funding and financial planning activities for those new proposed level of service. In the document, it does state that we have to do a 10-year forecast. So that's something that the financial plan would have to work around. Okay, so phase 1 from last year was established on new actual data that was collected since 2015. So the municipality actually created a asset management plan in 2014 and got approved in 2015 with an estimated asset data collection. This is what you see on your left. So that was estimated at the time since amalgamation, and that's what was used. However, when I started this in 2015 until now, these would be your actual assets on your right. So you can see that some were pretty close. Some were actually there was a very large difference in terms of numbers. So essentially what this shows you is that accurate data is very important, because at the end of the day, it does reflect on your replacement costs, which also impacts your level of service and your risk assessments and everything like that. So, just to show you an overview as to what this cost looks like. So you can see the pie chart actually categorizes all 4 from our core assets. So water, sanitary, storm, and transportation. They actually have a pretty similar cost as well. So you can see that everything is around $66 million to replace each category. So in total, our core assets are currently valued at $240 million to replace. This is our current state for infrastructure, only for core assets. So currently we're at a C+. In the document, it also shows you how this was created as well, if you're not that familiar with the numbering system. So you can see that the financial capacity and the actual asset condition works together to provide you with an overall grade, which is very important because that, for example, money can be transferred to another category that's in need, and then vice versa as well, in order to better reflect scores and trying to improve upon that. And again, so in the phase 1, you're also going to see obviously the replacement cost for all asset groups, the age distribution for each one, the material and size, in which case this for core assets is mostly pipe work. The level of risk for each category and the life cycle activities that are done based on categories which are different. And then intervention strategies. So for example, what we actually do when an asset gets to a particular stage in its age, different preventions have to be taken in order to keep that functioning, whether it's roads or water. And then obviously you have your condition report card for each category, and then you have your performance measures, which are actually provided to you by the province. Okay, so phase 2 is essentially the same, but it includes everything else. So you'll notice that in phase 2 you're going to have additional categories. One would be solid waste, which encompasses your waste collection and disposal, so like your landfills. Buildings and facilities, your parks and land improvements, so that can be just vacant properties. And then your fleet and transit, and then your machinery and equipment that's not necessarily associated to any building or facility. And again, the same thing has to be applied to each category. So you'll have, again, your replacement cost for each one, your age, materials involved, your risk and life cycle activities, intervention, condition, and performance for each one. Right now, the approximate value of phase 2 is around 110 million. A more detailed and accurate value is going to be established by next year. But essentially right now, as it stands, the city has about 350 million in terms of assets. There you go. Would there be any questions?
Thanks for your presentation, Jeremy. Anybody have any questions for Jeremy? Seeing none, thanks again. Oh, Danny, sure, go ahead. Councillor Whalen?
Yeah, just, the mayor and I are fortunate that we were involved with asset management since the start, so I think you've done an amazing job so far. I compare ourselves to other municipalities when I go across the north, and some of them aren't even sure what the proper explanation of an asset management plan is. So I think we're very well positioned for the amount of time we got into it. But I believe in this document, and I think eventually it'll be the go-to document for all of our capital budgeting. So looking forward to phase 2. So thanks for your efforts.
Thank you.
Awesome. Anyone else? I'm kind of looking forward to the financial aspect of things. One of the commitments the feds and the provincial government has given the municipalities was if you move towards the asset management plan and you put everything together and we build our strategies out, and what we would like to see is that the feds and the provincial government will actually financially support us being able to replace some of these. So, we're really looking forward to them holding up their end of the bargain, because putting together the asset management plan is extremely time consuming. There's a lot of work being put in by a number of individuals, and it is really nice to see the report, and it gives us a good understanding, and really looking forward to see us being able to start to replace some of the infrastructure. We've seen the age, we've seen the condition of some of those, and also, Jeremy, you did a great job in just highlighting how expensive it is. So it's not something that we can do alone with the small rate base that we do have. So we do need the other levels of government to step up. So thank you. Moving on to item 10, communications. Item 10A, Mitch McCrank, Manager of Transportation Services for the City of Temiskaming Shores, and read the notice of commencement for the transportation study that's received for information. Item B, Dr. Glenn Corneal, Acting Medical Officer of Health for the Temiskaming Health Unit, read the psychological health and safety in the workplace. and that was received for information. Item C, the Honorable Carolyn Mulrooney, Minister of Transportation, read the 2022-2023 gas tax program funding allocation. That was received for information. 10D, James Smith, Manager, Earlton Temiskaming Regional Airport for the Lumex Group. That's read our January 2023 Manager's Report and January 2023 financials. That was received for information purposes. 10E, Peter D. Henry, Director, Crown Forests and Lands Policy Branch for the Ministry of Natural Resources. Read the amendments to the Ontario Regulation 161-17, the Public Lands Act. That was received for information purposes. I do have a draft resolution in front of me. Be it resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores agrees to deal with communication items 10A through E in accordance with the agenda references. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Seconded by Councillor Foley. Discussion? Councillor Whalen?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Item E, with regards to floating accommodations on Crown land, I will be taking in that session tomorrow, so I'll be able to update council if it affects us directly.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. Anyone else? Councillor Wilson?
Thanks, Mayor. Item A, just the transportation study. I just want to make a point and thank the staff for the excellent work they've done to get this process started. And the transportation study, it'll establish a transportation system that's better for residents, for everybody, businesses, for those who drive, active transport, transit, all those types of things. And so this study, we will be very helpful, and although it's focused on the downtown cores, it certainly will provide a lot of important data for us to make sure we have a safe transportation system, as I said, for everybody. But we also want to hear from everybody who would like to participate. And if you go on the city website, you'll find a survey, and there'll be other opportunities to engage with this study. But to start off with, anybody who's interested, please go to the city website and complete the survey. So that's just what I wanted to mention. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Anyone else? Councillor Pelche-Living.
Thank you. Also, in regards to that transportation study, it looks very interesting. I wasn't sure from the letter if we know what the time frame is for that month. I think that you're gathering information for a month, but I'm not sure when it finishes. And also, I'm wondering if we have goals for the kind of demographics or numbers like response we're trying to reach.
Mitch, did you want to speak to that?
So the first survey that's out right now is expected to close on March 23rd. So the notice of commencement, it follows your EA process, which is a 30-day notice of commencement. So that commencement is going to be out for 30 days. We're trying to engage with the community for those 30 days, and the survey is going to also be open for those same 30 days. So that answers the first question. And then the second question was?
About your reach that you're trying to get, like if you have a goal for a number, and also like some demographics for who you're trying to get answers from.
I think the goal is to get anyone and everyone to participate, from the young who ride tricycles downtown to the older elderly, with wheelchairs and accessibility, things like that. So I mean, the demographic is hopefully everyone in the community that uses our downtown cores. With an overall number, I don't know what to expect. I don't think there was necessarily a number that was put in place, but we're trying to get as many people as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Mitch. Any other questions, comments? We have a motion in front of us. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Item 11, Committees of Council, Community and Regional. I have a draft motion in front of me. Be it resolved that the following minutes be accepted for information. A, the minutes of the Earlton-Temiskaming Regional Airport meeting held on January the 16th, 2023. B, the minutes of the Temiskaming Health Unit Board of Health meeting held on January the 25th, 2023. C, the minutes of the Temiskaming Shores Public Library Board meeting held on January 25th, 2023. And D, the minutes of the Temiskaming Transit Committee meeting held on February the 16th, 2023. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Graydon. Seconded. Thanks, Councillor Pelletier-Levin. Discussion? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Item 12, Committees of Council, Internal Departments. I have a draft motion in front of me. Be it resolved that the following minutes be accepted for information. A, the minutes of the Protection to Persons and Property meeting held on February 15th, 2023. And B, the minutes of the Public Works Committee meeting held on February 15th, 2023. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Foley. Seconded by Councillor Wilson. Discussion? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Item 13, reports by members of council. Anybody? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to do a very brief report on a seminar that I attended that was put on by the Health Unit, and it's called Planet Youth and the Icelandic Model Seminar on Preventing Substance Abuse in Youth. Very interesting seminar on February 22nd at Riverside Place, and was hosted by the excellent staff at the Temiskaming Health Unit, and very well attended by stakeholders from around the region. The Temiskaming Health Unit presented some statistics on substance abuse and indicated the high cost of alcohol abuse and other abuse in Canada, and also indicated that the use of alcohol by youth is higher in Northern Ontario than the rest of the province. The next presenters were from Planet Youth, Jon Sigfusson from Iceland and Robin Katrick from the U.S. They represent an organization, as I mentioned, called Planet Youth, and it's an analytics and consultancy organization that runs a guidance program in primary substance use prevention through a collaborative approach based on the Icelandic prevention model. This approach is multi-sector, evidence and community-based, and adaptable to any community. Planet Youth focuses on increasing protective factors for youth and adolescents through building healthy community environments such as families, schools, peer groups, and leisure activities. Communities that engage with Planet Youth are guided through a process of developing localized plans using local data to establish a community-based plan to address substance abuse issues. Planet Youth looks at substance abuse issue from a different perspective by focusing on long-term thinking over short-term, community solutions instead of substance abuse, substance use being an individual problem, providing community supports and policies instead of just say no to drugs, and challenging the social norms that substance use is a rite of passage. Recognizing that youth are influenced by environments in which they live and grow, enhancing the social environments in communities is vital as an upstream or primary approach. So the Icelandic model approach has had significant success in Iceland, but also in many other countries around the world that have adopted it. And these countries include many countries in Europe, South America, as well as the U.S., Australia, and Canada. And some Canadian examples include the province of New Brunswick, the city of Calgary, and Lanark County here in Ontario. And just a second quick report as well. I also attended a a full-day symposium online hosted by the Association of Local Public Health Agencies on February 24th. Again, a very interesting seminar that was particularly useful as a learning tool, certainly for me as a new member of the Temiskaming Health Unit Board of Directors. And the symposium consisted of various speakers who brought different perspectives regarding the importance of public health in Ontario. And there were presentations from various professionals who want to see public health playing a much larger role in our healthcare system, making the point that prevention of disease and injury is vastly more effective than treating these conditions. There was also discussion regarding the gaps that we're seeing in society regarding health, and that the social determinants of health need to be addressed more effectively through our public health system, but also through our support systems in Ontario. There was also a presentation from the Minister of Education's office outlining some health initiatives they're working on in the public education system. And they specifically discussed the backlog in childhood immunization. Dr. Kieran Moore, Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health, spoke as well and indicated the work that his office is doing. He indicated that every dollar invested in public health shows a $14 return to the province, so he is working hard to ensure that public health plays a significant role in supporting Ontario communities. And there were also some presentations on how public health communicates to our communities. There was a session on mental health strategies, and a presentation from AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and their work on public health advocacy. And that's my reports. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Pelcher-Living.
Thank you. I had also prepared a word to extend my condolences to firefighter Wyatt Holtz's family, loved ones, and colleagues for their loss. While most people would know that firefighting is risky, they may not know that occupational cancer is the leading cause of line-of-duty deaths amongst firefighters. I honor firefighter Holtz's memory, his service, contributions, and his sacrifice. I also wanted to mention that March is Francophonie Month, le mois de la francophonie. It's a time to join the 88 member countries and states representing 1 billion people and 300 million French speakers on 5 continents worldwide to celebrate our beautiful language. In Temiskaming Shores, nearly 1 in 3 people have French as their mother tongue. I thought it was worth mentioning.
Thanks, Councillor Pelcher-Living. Anyone else? I just wanted to take an opportunity to highlight PDAC, which is, still going on today. I had the fortunate benefit of participating at PDAC. The City of Temiskaming Shores is proud to continue to lead the Northern Ontario Mining Showcase at PDAC. We had 112 mining supply and service companies exhibiting at this year's pavilion from across Northern Ontario. This year's event is expected to set a record for attendance with roughly 30,000 people participating in PDAC. Not just our northern area, but throughout the convention center. Awesome to see. Last night we hosted the Northern Ontario Night at Steam Whistle, where we featured a number of local products and local entertainment. And I believe Councillor Foley is going to sing us a song now. Did you bring your guitar? We had the Premier of Ontario and a number of the cabinet ministers drop in to show their support last night, which was really awesome to see. A huge shout out to James Franks, Brad Hearn, Amy Vickery, Marley Tremblay from Marquee Consulting, Denise Deschamps from FedNor for their outstanding contributions to ensure the success of the Northern Pavilion. And last but not least, a thank you to Minister Haidu and FedNor for their ongoing partnership support for this fantastic initiative. And that's my report. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to notice of motions. Any notice of motions tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. 15A and its request for support for phlebotomy services. I have a draft resolution in front of me, whereas Council of the City of Temiskaming Shores hereby supports the Board of Directors of the Centre de Santé Communautaire de Temiskaming regarding its concerns brought to the Minister of Health of Ontario regarding limited phlebotomy services in the north end of the District of Temiskaming, and further that this resolution be forwarded to the Honourable Sylvie Jones, Minister of Health of Ontario, MPP John Vantoff, the Executive Director and the Board of Directors of the Centre de Santé Communautaire de Temiskaming. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Seconded by Councillor Foley. Discussion?
We have a Phenom board meeting Friday morning. I believe we're up to about 6 resolutions supporting this now, so we will be putting them together in a letter to Minister Jones. So it is receiving a lot of support.
Awesome. Thanks, Councillor Whelan. Any other comments? Those in favor? That motion is carried. 15B, Administration Report CS 007-2023, Procedural Bylaw. I have a draft resolution in front of me. Be it resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores acknowledges receipt of Administration Report CS-007-2023, that Council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to repeal and replace Bylaw 2008-160 as amended, being a procedural bylaw for the City of Temiskaming Shores for consideration of first and second reading at the March 7th, 2023 regular council meeting. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Wayland. Second. Excuse me. Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. 15C, Administration Report CS-008-2023. That's the lease for the Halebury Family Health Team. I do have a draft resolution in front of me. Be it resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores acknowledges receipt of Administration Report CS-008-2023, that Council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to enter into a one-year lease agreement with a 2% increase to the rental rates for use of office space by the Halebury Family Health Team at the Halebury Medical Centre for consideration at the March 7th, 2023 regular council meeting. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Foley. Seconded by Councillor Wilson. Discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. 15D, Administration Report CS-009-2023, Part Lot Control Exemption, 2373775 Ontario Inc. And I do have a draft resolution in front of me. Be it resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores acknowledges receipt of Administration Report CS-009-2023, and that Council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to grant an exemption to the part lot control provisions of the Planning Act on the lands described as part of PIN 61339-0756, part of Block C, Plan M79NB, Parts 1 and 2, Plan 54R-6262, Temiskaming Shores, District of Temiskaming, for consideration during the bylaw portion of the March 7th, 2023 regular council meeting. Can I get a mover, please? And a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Braden. Discussion? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. 15E, Administration Report CS-010-2023, Planning Fees Update. And I do have a draft resolution in front of me. Be it resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores acknowledges receipt of Administration Report CS-010-2023. The Council agrees to amend Schedule E to Bylaw 2012-039, being a bylaw to adopt a schedule of department user fees and service charges, and to repeal Bylaw 2012-056, being a bylaw to prescribe a tariff of fees for the processing of planning applications made in respect to planning matters, and bylaws 2016-020 and 2019-112, both being bylaws to amend Schedule E to Bylaw 2012-056. That Council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to amend Bylaw 2012-039, Schedule E Planning, Bylaw, and Building Services for consideration at the March 7th, 2023 regular council meeting. Now that was simple. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Graydon. Seconded, Councillor Foley. Discussion? And maybe I'll just add a few comments. So we did go through a list of a number of fees that they were presented, and I believe everybody did get a schedule of all of the changes and the updates. So any questions or concerns? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. 15F, memo number 006-2023-CS, the gas tax allocation for 2023. I think that should read 2022-2023. I have a draft resolution in front of me. Be it resolved, the Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores acknowledges receipt of memo number 006-2023-CS. The Council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to enter into an agreement with His Majesty the King in right of the Province of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Transportation for the Province of Ontario, for the dedicated gas tax funds for the public transportation program for consideration at the March 7th, 2023 regular council meeting. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Foley. Seconded by Councillor Wilson. Discussion? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. 15G, memo number 007-2023-CS, the Safe Restart Agreement, Phase 4 funding. I do have a draft resolution in front of me. Be it resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores acknowledges receipt of memo number 007-2023-CS. That Council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to enter into an agreement with His Majesty the King in right of the Province of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Transportation for the Province of Ontario, for the Safe Restart Agreement, Phase 4 funding for municipal transit for consideration at the March 7th, 2023 regular council meeting. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Graydon. Seconded by Councillor Pelche-Levin. Discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. 15H, Administration Report PW-001-2023, the Annual Water Reports. I do have a draft resolution in front of me. Be it resolved, the Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores acknowledges receipt of Administration Report PW-001-2023, more specifically, Appendices 01 and 02 being the 2022 annual reports for the water systems within the municipality in accordance with Schedule 22 of Regulation 170-03, being a regulation under the Safe Drinking Water Act, and that council hereby directs staff to notify the public of the availability of the 2022 annual reports in the water system binders located at the municipal office, 325 Far Drive, and posted on the municipal website. And further, that council directs staff to forward a copy of Administration Report PW-001-2023 to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, Safe Drinking Water Branch, North Bay, for their records. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Wayland. Seconded. Councillor Graydon. Discussion? Although, Councillor Whalen?
Yeah, I'll speak up. Thanks to staff and the Aqua staff that provided the tour of the facility here in Hillebury. I realize if you look through this, it's a pretty dry read, but you know, this document's as important as having a fire department. So you know, it deals with the health and safety of the residents, so it's quite lengthy, but we should have a good understanding of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Whalen. Anyone else? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. 15I, memo number 004-2023, PW, extension of agreement for asphalt patching. I have a draft resolution in front of me. Be it resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores acknowledges receipt of memo number 004-2023 PW, and that Council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to amend bylaw 2022-053 to extend the agreement with Miller Paving for the provision of asphalt patching services for 2023 at a price of $59.50 per 50 millimeter thickness and 107.10 for 90 millimeter thickness, plus applicable taxes, for consideration at the March 7th, 2023 regular council meeting. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks. Councillor Foley, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Discussion? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. 15J, memo number 005-2023-PW, extension of agreement for line painting. The draft resolution in front of me. Be it resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores acknowledges receipt of memo number 005-2023-PW, and that Council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to amend bylaw 2022-052 to extend the agreement with Miller Maintenance for the supply and application of roadway center and/or edge line painting services at various locations within the City of Temiskaming Shores for 2023 at a price of 0.413 per linear meter plus applicable taxes, for consideration at the March 7th, 2023 regular council meeting. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Pelche-Levin. Seconder, Councillor Graydon. Discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. 15K, Administration Report RS-004-2023, North on Tap 2023. I have a draft resolution in front of me. Be it resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores acknowledges receipt of Administration Report RS-004-2023, and that Council approves the request from North on Tap for the use of municipal land on Saturday, July the 8th, 2023, as well as the provision of various in-kind services, including setup and takedown of the event, supply of various equipment, and provision of free boat docking the day of the event. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Foley, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Discussion? Councillor Whalen?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. There was a time when it seemed we had an event on almost every weekend, but as volunteers, die off and go move on to other things. They become fewer and fewer. So I think when we get an event like this, we should do everything reasonable to support them. So I support this.
Thanks, Councillor Whalen. Any other comments? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Brings us to item 16, bylaws. And I have a draft bylaw in front of me. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-022, being a bylaw to adopt a procedural bylaw and hereby repeal bylaw 2008-160 as amended. All associated amendments, first and second reading. Can I get a mover, please? Okay. Okay, so I can read them all? Yeah, okay. So bylaw number 2023-023, being a bylaw to authorize the entering into a lease agreement with the Haileybury Family Health Team for the rental of space at the Haileybury Medical Center. Bylaw number 2023-024, being a bylaw to remove part lot control from part of Block C, Plan M79NB, Temiskaming Shores. Bylaw number 2023-025, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2012-039 as amended to support or to adopt schedules of departmental user fees and services for the City of Temiskaming Shores, Schedule E planning, bylaw and building services, and to repeal bylaws 2012-056, 2016-020, and 2019-112. Bylaw number 2023-026, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a funding agreement between His Majesty the King in right of Ontario, represented by the Minister of Transportation for the Province of Ontario, related to funding provided by the province under the dedicated gas tax funds for the public transportation program for 2023. Bylaw number 2023-027, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of the transfer payment agreement between His Majesty the King in right of Ontario, represented by the Minister of Transportation for the Safe Restart Agreement, Phase 4 Municipal Transit Funding. Bylaw number 2023-028, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2022-053 to enter into an agreement with Miller Paving Limited for the supply of labor, equipment, and material for asphalt patching services. Bylaw number 2023-029, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2022-052 to enter into an agreement with Miller Maintenance, a division of Miller Paving Limited, for the provision of roadway center and edge line painting services. Be hereby introduced and given first and second reading. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Whalen. Seconded by Councillor Peltier-Levin. Discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. And be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-023, 2023-024, 025, 026, 027, 028, and 029 be given third and final reading, be signed by the Mayor and Clerk, and the corporate seal affixed thereto. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Seconded by Councillor Foley. Discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. Brings us to item 17, the schedule of council meetings. We have a regular meeting of council scheduled for March the 21st, 2023 at 6 p.m. And also, item B, we have a committee of the whole scheduled for April the 4th, 2023 at 3 p.m. This brings us to item 18, our second question and answer period. Is there any questions? Councillor Whalen?
Thank you, Mayor. Not a question, just a comment. I just want to thank staff for going out a limb and trying committee of the whole. I know it's going to shuffle your schedules around a little bit, but I think it's going to be a good opportunity for all of council to have better input on a lot of the issues. We're still going to have certain groups that have separate meetings, but it's nice to see it on the agenda anyway. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Councillor Whalen. Any other questions? We don't have a closed session, so moving on to item 20, confirming bylaw. I have a draft resolution in front of me. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-030, being a bylaw to confirm certain proceedings of council of the Corporation of the City of Temiskaming Shores for its regular meeting held on March the 7th, 2023, be hereby introduced and given first and second reading. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Foley. Seconded by Councillor Wilson. Discussion? All in favor? That motion is carried. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-030 be given third and final reading, be signed by the mayor and clerk, and the corporate seal affixed thereto. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Graydon. Seconded by Councillor Pelche-Levin. Discussion? All in favor? That motion is carried. Brings us to item 21, adjournment. Be it resolved that council hereby adjourns this meeting at 7:04. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Foley. Seconded by Councillor Wilson. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We are adjourned.